If you got a FAFSA verification notice and it came with a code, V1, V4, or V5, that code is one of the most important things on your student's entire financial aid timeline right now, and most families have no idea what it actually means. Today, you're going to know exactly what each FAFSA verification tracking group requires, what you have to document, and why the group you landed in changes everything about your next move. One of these groups means your aid can't be paid out at all until you finish. I'll tell you which one, and why roughly 300,000 families landed in it this year alone. Stick with me, because there's also one detail about V4 that changed for 2026-27 that almost nobody is talking about, and it affects what you actually have to submit. Let's start at the beginning. Verification isn't punishment. It's a federally required audit process. The Department of Education requires schools to confirm that the information on a flagged FAFSA matches supporting documents. About 30% of FAFSAs get flagged every year. Being selected doesn't mean anyone thinks you lied. It means a statistical flag was tripped. That distinction matters, and I want you to hold on to it. Now, within verification, not every family has to prove the same things. That's where tracking groups come in. Take Marcus. He's 47, a detail-oriented dad who filed his daughter's FAFSA early for the 2026-27 year. Filed it the same way he did the year before. Same household, same income picture. And he got swept into V5. He read the letter twice, then read it again, because nothing in it explained why. He spent 2 evenings going through government PDFs before he realized the letter didn't actually tell him what V5 meant or what he needed to do. That experience, filing identically to the prior year and still landing in a more intensive group, is exactly what roughly 300,000 early filers dealt with in 2026-27. Marcus isn't an outlier, he's the pattern. So let's break down all 3 groups so you're not in the same position he was. The first group is V1, which is called standard verification. If you're in V1, you're in the most common group. Schools using V1 are required to verify 2 categories: tax and income information and household size. That's it. You're typically looking at a verification worksheet. Most schools have their own version, along with IRS tax transcripts or the information your school pulls through the IRS data retrieval tool if you used that when you filed. If your household size on the FAFSA didn't match what you have on file with the IRS, that's usually what triggered V1. It's administrative. It's solvable. The documentation burden here is the lightest of the 3 groups. Here's something worth knowing before we get to the next 2 groups. The specific documents your school asks for within each group can vary slightly by institution. The group defines the minimum. Your school's financial aid office can require more. That's legal, and it happens more than people expect. The second group is V4, and this is where a significant change happened for 2026-27 that you need to know about right now. V4 is called custom verification, and historically, it focused on identity confirmation. If you've done any research on V4 online and you saw references to something called a statement of educational purpose, that's gone for 2026-27. The Department of Education removed it from the V4 requirements for this cycle. So if you're in V4 custom verification FAFSA right now, you're not submitting that form. What V4 does still require is identity documentation, typically a government-issued photo ID. Your school may ask you to appear in person to present it, or they may have a process for submitting it remotely. Either way, the scope here is narrower than V1 in terms of financial documentation. You're not being asked to re-verify your income. You're being asked to confirm who you are. And this is the part most people miss about V4. Because it doesn't touch income, families sometimes assume it's the easy path and stop paying attention. Don't do that. Identity holds are just as real as income holds. Your aid doesn't move until it's cleared. Now we get to V5, and this is the one I mentioned at the top, the one that stops your disbursement entirely until you're done. V5 is called aggregate verification, and the name tells you almost everything. It aggregates the requirements. If you're in V5, you're dealing with what is V5 Aggregate Verification. Both the income and household verification requirements from V1 and the identity verification requirements from V4 combined into a single process. You're not choosing one track or the other, you're doing both. Marcus is in V5. That's why his daughter's financial aid package is completely frozen. Not reduced, not pending a small clarification. Frozen. No disbursement can happen until V5 is satisfactorily completed. That's the federal standard, and schools don't have flexibility on it. Here's what I want you to understand about why so many families landed in V5 in 2026-27, and why it's not a fraud accusation. The Department of Education uses automated matching systems that compare FAFSA data against IRS records, Social Security Administration data, and other federal databases.
When there's a discrepancy, even a small one, even one caused by a data import timing issue, the system can escalate a flag to the more intensive group. Marcus filed identically to the prior year. The system still flagged him, almost certainly because of a matching issue in the automated process, not because anything on his FAFSA was wrong. Being in V5 means the system needed more confirmation. It does not mean the system thinks you committed fraud. Now I want to circle back to the V1 versus V4 versus V5 FAFSA comparison in a practical way, because I want you to leave here with a clear mental map. V1, income and household size. Most common, you're matching tax data. V4, identity only. For 2026-27, the Statement of Educational Purpose is no longer part of this. Government-issued ID is the core requirement. V5, both combined. And your aid is on a complete hold until it's done. If you're in any of these groups, the worst thing you can do is wait. Schools have verification deadlines. Some are tied to your enrollment date. Some are tied to semester disbursement dates. If you miss your school's deadline, your aid for that semester can be canceled. Not delayed, canceled. And you'd have to reapply for reinstatement, which isn't guaranteed. That window closes faster than most families realize. Marcus figured this out the hard way. He spent the first 2 weeks reading everything he could find instead of contacting his school's financial aid office. The documentation request came in week 3. By then, he was already behind the informal timeline the school was working from. The paper wasn't wrong. The timing was. Don't repeat that. I put together a free resource called the Verification Tracking Group Decoder, specifically for families in this situation. It maps out what each group actually requires, what documents you're typically gathering, and what questions to ask your financial aid office so you're not going in blind. You can find it at fafsa-appeal.com. It's in the free tools section, no purchase required. And here's the payoff I teased at the top. The thing about V5 that most families get wrong on the first pass. The same mistake that cost Marcus 2 weeks. When you're in V5, you'll often receive 2 separate requests from your school's financial aid office. One covers the income and tax documentation. The other covers identity. Because they arrive sometimes days apart, families frequently think they've finished when they've only completed one track. They submit their tax transcripts, they hear nothing for a week, and they assume they're done. They're not. The identity piece is still open. The hold is still active. And because no one called to remind them, they find out when they log into the student account and the aid still isn't there. If you're in V5 Aggregate Verification, you need to explicitly confirm with your financial aid office that both tracks, income and identity, have been received, reviewed, and cleared. Not just submitted, cleared. There's a difference, and the hold doesn't lift until both sides say complete. Marcus learned this in week 4. Once he understood what he was dealing with and organized his documentation by track, the process moved quickly. His daughter's package is back on track. That's what happens when you stop trying to guess and start working the actual system. If this helped you make sense of what you're dealing with, a like on this video genuinely helps YouTube show it to other families in the same spot. And there are more videos on this channel walking through exactly what to do inside each verification group. They're worth watching before you call your school. You know what group you're in now. You know what it requires. The next step is yours.